Now we slide over to the next news video, which we start with easy news. And this is from Dave Schilling, who was a guest on a Fightful Select program with Jeremy Lambert and Joel Pearl, talking about certain aspects of his WWE writing career, specifically Kofi Mania and the original plan for WrestleMania 35. According to Dave Schilling, the original plan as of April 2019 was, on the debut edition of SmackDown on Fox, on the debut edition of SmackDown on Fox, that Kofi would lose the WWE Championship to Brock Lesnar in quick fashion. And basically the match we got, which I think is kind of ludicrous to me, that would be the plan from the very beginning, because how do you think that is a good way to start off your program or to get people talking or whatever the case is? I think it would have been better off going the route of actually having a somewhat competitive match rather than having Brock squash Kofi. Because it kind of points out to the idea of making Kofi an established main eventer was never the plan, which how could you have somebody win the world title and not have the plan B to establish them as a main eventer? Then what was the point? Other than to capitalize on some momentum and to capitalize on some fan reactions, which I think is a waste of time if you're not going to capitalize it for the long run. Because it's like something that Paul Heyman said that, was it, like based on reaction, was it who he was working with or was it the person? And I think, at that time, it wasn't because Kofi was working with somebody like Daniel Bryan. It was because Kofi was Kofi Kingston and people were ready to get behind him. Well, I mean, actually, that's not true. People were already behind him. People were ready to get behind him in that situation with him being world champion. The other aspect was, according to Dave Schilling, the original plan for WrestleMania 35 was a SmackDown Women's Title triple threat match involving Asuka, Sonya Deville, and Mandy Rose. And, the fact of the matter is, the plan that we got was the first ever women's main event in WrestleMania history for the women's championship, for both women's championships, I should say, between Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda Rousey. With, I believe, that is when Charlotte beat Asuka, leading into WrestleMania to win the SmackDown Women's Championship. And then, basically, lost the title at WrestleMania in the triple threat. Basically, Charlotte beat Asuka to make the match a triple threat match. And I mean, that makes sense. And as far as where the plan is and what we got, or what we could have had and what we got, I think what we got was the perfect first WrestleMania main event. And the fact that what the plan was not to give the women the main event. So I think, let me put it this way. WrestleMania 35 was the WrestleMania before the pandemic, and the last WrestleMania that was only one night, which means that it was only one potential night to have a WrestleMania, there was only one potential spot for a WrestleMania main event. So unless the WrestleMania main event was going to be Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey, I think that the WrestleMania main event that we got was better than the match that we could have had for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Because Because also I would say we got 2 retirement matches on that show, one being Kurt Angle and the other being Batista. But that was also WrestleMania 35 was also Kofi Mania. So unless the main event was going to be Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's Championship, I think what we got is better than Asuka versus Sonya Deville versus Mandy Rose for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And the plan was for Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose to end up in a romantic relationship, and for Sonya to lay down for Mandy. And basically post-match for Sonya and Mandy to kiss, sealing the romantic relationship, which I do think, if I remember correctly, at that point, it did seem like that was a possibility for WWE to go to that route. I'm trying to remember what actually happened in that situation. But actually, I'm not seeing Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville on the WrestleMania 35 card, which actually I'm probably thinking of WrestleMania 36 when Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose collided in a tag team match. So it is entirely possible that the plan that they wanted to do for WrestleMania 35, they held off and also probably had the idea to do for WrestleMania 36, but the plan may have changed because of the pandemic. But I don't think it was a bad idea. I don't think it would have been a bad idea. I think it would have been the wrong idea based on the situation. I think it would have been wrong based on the situation. I don't think WrestleMania would have been the time and place for that. I think that, and don't get it twisted, all I'm saying is, based on what we got, the triple threat match with Becky, Ronda, and Charlotte in the main event, winner take all, if you're asking me to pick between that and what we could have had, unless what we could have had was Becky versus Ronda in the main event, which there's no way to know that. There is no way to know that. I'm saying what we got is better than what we could have had. Because I think what we could have had is what we got at WrestleMania 36. To a lesser degree. Now we move over to some quick hits, as some quick hits are WWE wants longer title reigns. WWE wants to modernize their title, their record books. So their record, I don't want to say that the record books are outdated, but a lot of the records that they have for longest title reign, for this, for that, date back to the 1980s, 1970s, specifically the Intercontinental Championship. The longest reigning Intercontinental Champion is still the Honky Tonk Man, which he held the title for his record-setting reign was in the late 80s. I believe it was 1987 to 1988. Or into 1988. So WWE wants to update their title reigns so it's more modern. And I've been saying this for the longest time, that WWE needs to have longer title reigns to establish more of a positive perception for their championships. And Triple H has done, WWE, since Triple H took over, has done a wonderful job of reestablishing and changing the perception of the titles, making them matter more. Specifically the Intercontinental title. WWE still needs to work. They still need to work at it with the Women's Championship, the Tag Team titles, yada, 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 yada. And the United States title still needs a little work. But Bianca Belair has held the title over a year. Roman, everybody knows Roman's title reign. The Usos held the title for over a year. Braun Breaker almost hit a year. The list goes on and on and on and on and on with the people in people in their title reigns, but it's a matter of finding the footing and knowing not everybody needs to hold the title for a year. This person could hold the title for 6 months. That person can hold the title for 12, 8 months, 5 months, whatever. Not everybody needs a year-long title reign. You know what I mean? So it's good, but there's also, you got to find your footing. The Young Bucks have got the wrestling world talking, as the Young Bucks are have in their bios that they would love to face the Usos before they hang it up to see if they can break the Super Kick world record for a match, which I, for one, would love to see the Usos versus the Young Bucks before both teams hang it up. But I will stick to my guns and say that I think if anybody's going to jump ship to WWE, it's going to be Kenny Omega. Speaking of jumping ship, though, JD McDonough and Zoe Stark both got called up to the main roster during the WWE draft on Saturday, which was the supplemental draft. And props to both JD and Zoe Stark for getting called up. I'm excited to see what they can do on the main roster. I think both of them are ready, and both of them have tremendous potential to really establish themselves as top stars in WWE at some point. I think JD might be a little bit more ready and a little bit more seasoned for the main roster than Zoe Stark is, but that's just because Zoe Stark never had that opportunity to lead NXT like I feel JD McDonough was given the opportunity to be the leader, but Zoe Stark was never really given that same luxury, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't mind the free agents in the draft. I know that there are some people that may see some people being free agents. Omos, Dolph Ziggler, Ali, those guys being free agents, that discounts the brand exclusivity. I don't think it does. I think, if anything, it may allow those guys to find their brand at some point, but also it happens when you do, when baseball does the draft. Not everybody gets drafted. Some people become free agents. So it's the same thing. The only difference is, Dolph Ziggler's not going to go into the independents because he didn't get drafted in the WWE draft. I don't think it really, I think it doesn't hurt. It doesn't really affect the brand exclusivity as long as it's not overshadowing the brand exclusivity, I guess is the best way to put it. Now, on to some fan backlash over the recent Britt Baker t-shirt, which is Britt Baker sporting a black eye, which happened during that beatdown with a couple weeks ago on Dynamite with the JAS and the Outcast. I understand the backlash. I understand the criticism of the t-shirt. And I understand just, in general, I understand it. But the fact of the matter is, I also understand Britt Baker's criticism of people criticizing the t-shirt. I just think that the best way to put it is that if there was a caption to it and it wasn't just a picture of Britt Baker with a black eye, some sort of a caption, that it would have helped the t-shirt and eased out the criticism. I do understand both sides. I just think that if AEW added a caption to it, they wouldn't have been hit with as much criticism. But also, AEW needs to learn they don't need to make a t-shirt out of everything. They need to learn that they don't need to make a t-shirt out of everything. And, there's that. But either way, I understand both sides. I just think that a caption would, adding a caption to the t-shirt would have refrained and would have gotten rid of most of the negativity that was mounted from this situation. Either way, that is it for the news, and I will see you in the next video.